Dear old pal Mike Carter here, back for episode 13 of Breakfast with the Beats, Lucky 13. I'm here as always with my co host, Dave Funnel. Last week, if you were here, we talked about the corn sweats. We had them all week last week here in the Midwest. We are hoping for a break in the temperatures today. Supposed to be in the lower 80s with hopefully a little bit lower humidity. This is not good fat guy weather. Happy 4th of July to those of you who are celebrating. Please celebrate safely. Do not drink and drive. Take care of yourselves this weekend. Dave, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. My corn has been sweating all week long. But happy Independence weekend to you and all the listeners out there.
Did you go to the farmers market as we discussed last weekend and start asking people about the corn sweats?
I have not. Just concerned if I do that as a male, asking people that a grown male, they might call some authorities on me. So
even though you look like Jason Statham,
uh, I'm looking like a lazy Jason Statham. It's my summer. I don't need to shave sort of look right now. So I don't know. I got the lazy Jason Statham. My corn is sweating, and I'm enjoying life right now.
might be best to keep those thoughts to ourselves, is what you're saying to me. I understand.
Maybe one of these days. I'm sure if I have a few too many of these, I can.
Sure.
I'll talk about some corn sweats, but.
Yeah, the funny thing for you is that you keep your hair short, and sometimes you look like you're bald, but you're not bald at all. You have a lot of hair. You have more hair than I do.
You know what? You rarely ever not have a hat, so I have no idea what's going on underneath that.
Well, I'm starting to copy my dad, which is my dad's got a full head of hair at age almost 80.
Mm.
He's got the bald spot on the top of the crown. So it looks like he was like a monk, like he'd been wearing like a, or like a yarmulke or something for years on top of his head. And so that's what I'm getting. Now, if I bend over and show you that to you on camera, I might pass out because, when I move too quickly and stuff like that as an old person, you can do things like that. But the crown of my head, I can assure you.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I wear hats is that, but I also feel like hats make me a little more incognito around town. Like maybe they won't recognize me. And then my kids point out to me, well, Dad, you're 5'10", you're 240 pounds, and you have a beard and you're loud. You're not going to really be incognito. So let's be done with that and move on. Okay. Speaking of moving on, our intro question for today, Dave, this is a good one, I think. Name a player that you have held onto through trials and tribulations this season who looks like they might be turning it around, and you hope and pray is turning the corner anyway.
All right. So for me, it's Caleb Durbin. I really liked what he did at the end of last year, especially knowing that he was actually doing it through injury.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that he's been doing as of late. Now, I had a whole thing of stats lined up, but then someone on Twitter named Stats at Red Sox Stats did a great job here. So if I'm just going to read off what he said, and I'm going to go with it. So he had 164 plate appearances, and then after that he had 114. So it's A versus B. Mm-hmm. He's gone from swinging at pitches in the zone 58% of the time. Now he's at 72%. So he's waiting for his good pitches, and he's actually swinging at it. He's also swinging harder. So his bat speed went up. And with that, a better path of contact. What he's been doing as of late, he's shown a decrease in ground balls, which is great, an uptick in pulling the ball. And you've seen his stats over the last little while. His batting average has gone up from, where is it here? I don't know. He's been on fire as of late. He's hitting the ball well. And over the last month or so, he's been getting on base. He's been hitting the ball hard. He's been stealing bases, and he's been doing everything that you expected from him to carry over from last year. And I think it's something to remember when you're looking at players to pick. A, he was injured in the offseason, so he had to recover from that. And B, he came to it from like to a brand new team, brand new city, and all of that. There's a lot of adjustment that needs to go on here. So, as someone who was picked late in the draft, if you waited on him expecting for him to get better or hoping that he would get better, he's someone that's really starting to come through as of late. And I think if you've held on to him, I think he can maintain what he's doing now because he's actually showing what he did last year now.
Yeah, he's a nice player. I when Milwaukee traded him to Boston, I thought, boy, that swing is tailor made for Fenway Park. Banging balls off of the green monster. To your point, in June, he hit 6 home runs, had 13 RBIs, scored 16, and stole 5 while hitting 326.
Yeah,
that's a player that is very, very helpful to you, especially at the hot corner where injuries have really kind of struck down some of those key players. I mean, I know a lot of people have been reeling from the loss of Jose Ramirez, but rostering a guy like Caleb Durbin can allow you to kind of weather that storm a little bit. Speaking of Jose Ramirez, I heard last night he did just get the stitches out from his hamate bone surgery, and it looks like he's going to start gripping a bat at least this weekend, if not taking some dry swings, which is good. That doesn't change the timeline at all, as we know, with that injury. He's still looking at 5 to 7 weeks, but it's good to hear that he's progressing on that. My player is a little bit worse than that in the situation in terms of what he's done, but I decided through thick and thin to hang on to Alex Bregman. And while the back of the baseball card shows me what it looks like he could be, he's not really done that this year, has he, folks? We're sitting here in the first week of July. He's hitting 243 with 7 home runs, a couple of steals. I don't have him for steals. I have him for, I'm hoping, a batting average floor and 18 to 20 home runs. The underlying metrics are tough when you look at what he's doing. He's not hitting the ball as hard as he has before. In fact, he's got the lowest exit velocity of his career right now at 87.7 miles per hour. The strikeout rate remains really low. The walk rate remains really high. The hard hit percentage is down. So there's been a lot of things and speculation about where he's at, but he hit a home run last week and looks like he might be starting to come out of it a little bit. He's had 5 hits over his last 3 days. And he had a really interesting quote the other day I heard on the radio where he said, I just have to be better. I just haven't been good. I haven't been good with runners in scoring position. I have not done my job. And I thought it was really big of him to stand up. I mean, he is making a lot of money. We know that. And the Cubs brought him in ostensibly for the type of leadership that he's showing when he has these press conferences, but they also brought him in to be able to drive in runs. And he's just not really been able to do that so far this year. So the hope is that, he will hang on to that. But this just goes to, again, magnify what we had talked about before, Dave, and which we've talked about over the course of several weeks, which is when you make mistakes in drafting in very deep leagues, it can be very, very hard to recover from those types of mistakes. And so, as I've talked to people here on the show about my Tout Wars team, I had Tatis and Merrill, both who had pretty good weeks last week. I think Tatis is up to 5 home runs now, and I know Merrill hit one last night. So those guys are starting to come around a little bit, but I really could use Bregman. I'm trying to climb out of a gigantic hole that I put myself in at Tout and working on that. But we'll see what happens. But I'm holding on to Bregman with hopes of a better second half. And I think that the seeds are there for it to be better. At the end of the day, you have to trust history with a lot of these guys. And he's only 32. He should not be in the decline phase, I don't think, of his career yet. So I'm holding on to Alex Bregman.
I like Bregman. I like the fact that he owned it. The tricky part with him coming into the season was just he's only ever played at ballparks that were really conducive to his bat. Like playing in Houston with the short porch or playing in Boston with the wall. It was always very good for his right-handed bat. And now he goes to a place that might not be so great for a right-handed bat, and it's got the swirling winds. So
Right.
it's really tough, especially in the early stages of the season, to play in Wrigley Field. But he is good enough in the sense that he should be able to learn from things, recover, and hit well. So I think he's due for a good second half.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right. I really don't have much choice in that league other than to hold on to him and hope that he produces the back of his baseball card at some point. So he's still got a second half to do that, and it's getting warmer here as we've been documenting on this show and all over. let's shift over to our beat writer roundup for this week. And as always, we have 3 articles here to discuss. The first one is a shout out to my good friend Dave Fitzgerald, who is one of the most diehard Yankee fans. I think he thinks he's on the team. He uses the "we" a lot, which I can't stand. He's not on the team, but Dave's a great guy, wonderful human being, a great dad, and he's a huge Yankees fan. The article that we pulled up here is from Chris Kirschner in The Athletic, where Aaron Judge called out the Yankees this week on their lack of focus in a very rare and pointed criticism that he had. Dave, talk a little bit about what he says in that article, because the Yankees have really been struggling.
Yeah, so the article is called Aaron Judge Calls Out Yankees, quote, lack of focus in rare pointed criticism. And yeah, he was asked about his thoughts on the team and, what they've been up to. And he said, quote, well, it's not great, just a little lack of focus, and we just got to dial it in. Our ultimate goal is to win a World Series. And I think guys have to remember that every single day they show up here. We're here to win a World Series. And quite frankly, over the month of June, they really haven't showed up every day. And as much as I don't like, teammates calling out each other, or, just like any place of work, coworkers calling out each other, I don't think he's wrong here. They've been really bad. The month of June, the team had a .221 batting average, good for 29th in baseball. They also had a 25.4% K rate, which was the 4th worst, and an 87 WRC plus, which was 26th in all of baseball. Now, this is a team that also lives and dies by the home runs.
Mm-hmm.
They were 2nd in baseball in all of June, where 19% of their hits were actually home runs.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, just how bad were some of these players? So Kirschner also set up a tweet that said, why are the Yankees in a slump right now? Goldschmidt is 0 for his last 14. Rice was 5 for his last 41. Jason Dominguez, 2 for his last 17. Volpe, 5 for 30. Caballero, 5 for 35. Bellinger, 3 for his last 30. And Jazz Chisholm, 1 for his last 15.
Oof.
It was really bad. And I don't understand why, because these are talented hitters. So maybe Judge was actually right that they weren't really focused and lasered in on the fact that we need to do our part. Now, the thing that I didn't like about Judge actually calling out his teammates was, quite frankly, he didn't really do his part this year either.
That was going to be my question to you. Yeah.
He hasn't really been that good either. Now, you could make the case that he was actually hurt this season, and that was kind of, taking away from his stats, but he's got like a .248 batting average himself, and he's striking out a ton. So I don't know. It's just a really weird vibe right now, because this lineup should be playing better and hitting better than what it is, and it's just really not. And it really came out in June.
Unrelated to that, are you ready to have the conversation yet that the Yankees are really struggling to develop some of these guys that are coming up through the minor leagues? I mean, Jason Dominguez, Volpe, Wells, these are their guys, and they've been pretty lousy.
Yeah, it's been a while since they've been able to, have their homegrown guy. I think Ben Rice is really the only one.
He's pretty good.
But he's really been the only one that they've had. Otherwise, like, Dominguez was supposed to be the next Judge, and he hasn't. Spencer Jones just can't not strike out, and it's just one after another. And it's funny. It's like we've joked about the Yankee tax with all of these prospects. Mm-hmm. It's because they're the Yankees that they get bumped up. Their value gets bumped up. But when in reality, they can't really produce homegrown hitting talent.
Yeah, they're in a bit of a predicament because they have some of those guys that are injured, like you said. But I also think that some of the other solutions that they have might have been playing over their head a little bit. Goldschmidt was definitely playing over his head. Yeah. Caballero seems to be kind of coming back to earth. Those are good bench pieces, but right now those guys are pressed into being starters. the thing that I think the Yankee fans can kind of hang their hat on though is obviously they had some pitching injuries, but Max Fried is throwing a bullpen this weekend, I believe. Carlos Rodon did go out with some elbow inflammation, although it appears that the elbow is intact based on what he said yesterday, that he just has some inflammation. Carlos Rodon is the type of guy that is going to be hurt 2 or 3 times a year. There's just really nothing much you're going to be able to do. Clark Schmidt is not anywhere near facing live hitters yet either. So, but when they get Fried back, and if they get Rodon back and can add those guys back to Garrett Cole and Cam Schlittler and Will Warren, Ryan Weathers has not been great. They've got some pitching depth there where they might be able to make a run into the playoffs, but they're going to need to start hitting again. And I liked what you said about Judge maybe looking at himself in the mirror a little bit. I know he's the captain and the guy that's in charge of the team, but it's like, hey, big guy, you weren't doing so great either. So, if you want to call it the lack of focus, maybe do that privately. Maybe don't do it in the media, but maybe that was part of the method to the madness. We'll have to see how that plays out for the Yankees.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can. You know what though? They always go through ups and downs. They either look unstoppable or just they shouldn't be out there. So maybe this is just one of their slumps right now, and they can turn it around. I don't know.
Point. That's a good point. Okay, we're going to shift to our next article here, Dave, which is about Tampa Bay Rays and one of your guys. I mean, you've been on this guy since before he even came up to the major leagues, and going back years in our friendship, you're talking about Junior Caminero. There's an article here that we found by Adam Berry that I wanted to pick your brain about, and it was titled "Rays Running Out of Words to Describe Caminero After Tying Franchise Mark."
Yeah, so as I sit here with my Rays t-shirt on, I just wanted to say, as much as I loved Junior Caminero coming out, I was actually wrong on him this year. And I'm here to publicly admit my fault. I thought that because they were going back indoors, I thought that he would struggle because I thought he only really did well because of the minor league play ballpark that they played in last year. But man, he looks so good right now. He's lowered his strikeout rate. He's raised his walk rate. The XBA supports it. And on the broadcast, watching some of the games, they've talked about how he's been mentored. I can't remember who mentored him, but they've been reminding him not to chase. Don't go after pitchers' pitches. Wait for your pitches. And it's really helping him out this year. He's not chasing at all. He's swinging at pitches inside the zone more and more. And as a result, he's hitting the ball harder. Buster Olney put out a tweet a couple days ago, and you can see his chase rate is going down, his rate of hard contacts going up. And he said that he could hit his 100th career homer this year at age 23, which would be outstanding. Now, when we look at Caminero and the Rays, are they a one-trick pony? I don't think so. They're getting a lot of timely hitting right now. Yandy Diaz, he's hitting well over 300 with patience. Aranda, he's close to 300, but he has a lot of good patience. And a guy that I really like that I know you hate, Chandler Simpson.
That's unfair. I don't hate him.
You don't? Okay, I thought you did.
No. As a human being, I don't hate him. I just don't know what he brings me to my fantasy table.
As a human being, he's such a gentleman. But no, okay. I love what he does. I love that he can just get on base, and when he's there, he's a menace. Watching him hit, and he can stretch out what should be a single into a double. You can just see it in his eyes while he's running. I don't know. I really like watching him play. But the rest of the lineup, they get a lot of timely hits and pitching. And I don't know if that's luck or not, or a sign of a good team.
Yes.
But it's just the sign of a really good season. And I really like what they're doing there offensively. Now, pitching-wise, they've got Drew Rasmussen, who's a stud. They're developing Griffin Jacks with his 6 pitches. And Ian Seymour is blossoming before our eyes right now. I don't know if you happen to see his game this week against the Royals, but he has such a way of just pinpointing corners of the strike zone. It's just he can really locate his pitch as well. and I really like seeing what he's doing right now. So I don't know. That's my Rays rant. I like what they're doing, and I think it's a lot. A lot has to do with Junior Caminero, but man, the rest of the team is rallying along with them.
Caminero's a stud. There's no doubt about it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at what he's doing and see how special he is. Do you know that he has his average bat speed is 80 miles an hour this year?
Whoa.
I've never seen that before. It's in the 100th percentile. I can't imagine that there's too many guys in the major leagues that swing harder than he's doing. That's a mile and a half faster than what he was doing last year, which we thought was going to be like a career year. It's looking right now like he could easily surpass what he did last year when he hit 264 with 45 home runs and 7 steals. Now he's got no stolen bases this year, which feels like quibbling at this point. But he's hitting 288. He's got 25 home runs, 55 RBIs. It's looking like he's going to be able to surpass that. He's just a monster. But the point that I wanted to get at you with on this as well was this is a really good team. And you and I go back and forth about this all the time. And you know that I'm old school about when it comes to winning baseball games. You know, you have to be able to manufacture runs and get key hits. They've got a lot of really good ball players. The top half of their lineup is really kind of stacked. But then they make it work on the back end with guys like Victor Mesa Jr., and Taylor Wall's hitting 200 playing shortstop, but he catches the ball. They've got Hunter Fiducia as their starting catcher. Johnny DeLuca makes meaningful contributions. Ryan Velarde, when he plays, makes meaningful contributions. How many teams can you take a guy like Velarde, who's like the 5th outfielder on the team, and then when he plays, he bats 4th? Like, they just figure out ways to win baseball games. And part of that is because they catch the ball really well, and you touched on it really nicely. They just always find pitching. They always find guys that can contribute in ways that are really meaningful. Obviously, those of us who play fantasy baseball know Rasmussen, but you know that I've been privately, maybe not so privately anymore, obsessed with Griffin Jacks. I've just always thought the stuff was terrific and that they just needed to figure out a role for him, whether that be closer or just let him be or be a starter. Right now, he looks like he can be a really meaningful starter for them. He's up to 5-6 innings at a time now, finally, and those have been really effective. A lot of players are starting to add him in deeper leagues. And you said about Ian Seymour, I'm actually writing about him in my Rotoballer piece this weekend as a guy who is way under the radar as a starting pitcher. I think he's rostered in maybe, I guess I could tell you because I have it up on my other screen. in Yahoo leagues, he is rostered at currently, as of this moment, at 31%. So we're doing it wrong, guys and girls. We gotta get Seymour on that roster. But I love the Rays. They're, besides the White Sox, they're probably my second favorite American League team to watch, just because I love the way they go about their business. But nobody cares what I think about that. Let's move on to the next article here, the last one that we have of the day, and that's from Casey Drotter covering the Cubs. Now, you and I were talking off air about the Cubs this morning. We'll keep that conversation mostly private. Have you seen a team in recent memory that's more schizophrenic than the Cubs are? They score 23 runs one day, and then yesterday they get throttled 17-1. But the article that Drotter wrote was about Dansby Swanson. Shout out to my head coach at the freshman level, Kyle Chirac, he and I made a bet at the beginning of the season. I told him I think Dansby's going to sell out for power this year, and I'll bet you he hits 25 home runs. And he thought that was laughable, and he bet me $5 American that Dansby would not do that. So every time Dansby hits a home run, I just sent him the number in parentheses. Kyle has largely stopped talking to me because Dansby is up to 16 home runs now, isn't he, Dave? Tell us a little bit about that article.
Yeah, it's been quite a run here for Dansby Swanson, because he really, I'd say about two or 3 weeks ago, he hit a low point. He was hitting 175 on June 16th, and that's 70 games in. That's a huge sample size. But over the last 13 games, 9 home runs, 4 stolen bases, batting .365. Now, obviously, he won't keep this up, because if he did, he'd be on a 112.50 pace. But it just goes to show you that you never really know with baseball But what you do know is that a guy who has a long track record eventually should get back to where he was. We talked about this earlier with Bregman, and now we're talking about it with Dansby Swanson. This guy is a guy who year after year produced power with speed with a decent batting average.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's coming out of the blue. This is something that he was going to figure out. And it looks like he may have. Now, there's a side note here. This could have also been part of a weather-infused offense,
Mm-hmm.
because the winds on those days where he had his great home runs, they were blowing out a lot. I think the winds were 19 miles per hour blowing out on the day he hit 3 home runs. So you do that and you add humidity to it, chances are he's going to do well. But overall, I don't think people should be overly surprised that he actually hit, like he's been doing what he's doing, maybe to the level, but overall, when you look at his numbers right now, other than the batting average, he's on pace to have another typical Dansby Swanson season. And him just working through it is just what good hitters and veteran hitters do.
He's also pulling the ball in the air at the highest rate of his career, and not by much, but earlier in the season he was doing that, which is what led me to make that bet with Kyle about, hey, I think he's selling out for power, and I think that's probably a good move for him. He's never going to be a high average guy, and so it's worked for him, and he's had a really hot last couple of weeks. To your point, one thing I would add to that before we take our break, OptiStats on Twitter posted this yesterday. The Cubs are the second team in MLB history to win one game by 15 plus runs, but then lose their next game by 15 plus runs. The other was the Boston Bean Eaters from September 10th and 11th, 1894. A 25-8 win followed by a 17-2 loss, both in Chicago against what was then the Colts, who are now the modern day Cubs. So the Cubs have been involved in both ends of that situation. But that's a remarkable stat, isn't it? That's the kind of year that they've had. They have had a 10-game winning streak. They've had a 10-game losing streak. They're just kind of all over the map. And I think that might actually continue for the Cubs as they try to fight their way into the playoffs with all the pitching injuries that they've had. With that, we're going to take our first commercial break of the show. We'll be right back after the ad break and talk a little bit about the baseball. All right, Dave, we're back. Big sigh. Got to ask you about the baseball. Last week, we talked about on our show, before anybody else did, that I know of anyway, of the shows that we listen to, about the actual baseball and what the baseball may or may not be telling us. And then unrelated to that discussion, this past week, a friend of the show, Eno Saris, one of the best in the business here of doing what he does. He's just a tremendous writer, tremendous podcaster. He wrote in The Athletic about how the baseball is behaving. And in that article, he suggested that MLB officials don't see any link between this factory defect that came out in the last couple of weeks and the liveliest baseball that we've had in about 7 years. Can you summarize that article and let us know a little bit about what Eno was saying there?
Yeah, so what Eno was talking about was he actually reached out to MLB to discuss what's been happening. And it was revealed that previously the new balls had some yarn oil come out of it, causing yellow pigmentation on the ball. So as a result, these balls look different. Now, MLB said that there's no connection between this pigment mishap and the ball performance, but players think otherwise. And Scooble was one of the players saying that he's noticing these balls are doing weird things. They are flying out of ballparks. Now, MLBPA did decline any comment for this article, which was quite interesting. But apparently teams were informed about this in May. They knew that there were some problems with this new batch of balls. Now, the cosmetically different balls were actually removed. So that's a good start. And this new batch of balls that are going to come out, They're going to come out in late 2026 or early 2027. So right now they can't get rid of these, these pigmented balls or this current batch of balls because, well, they don't have balls ready and financially it's not feasible to do so. There were some anonymous report readers that said these balls, these manufactured pigmented balls, they were actually not included. They weren't tested for drag. And it's important because drag measures the amount that a ball slows down in the air. So the more drag means the less distance traveled. And the amount of drag in June means that it was traveling about 8 feet further on average because it lost a lot of drag. So right now, we don't really know too much about these balls other than they look different. They may feel different. Eno was on The Craft with Nick Pollock. Great podcast, by the way.
Terrific.
He suggested that there could have been a correlation with the heat and the time stored away that causes more of the yellow oil to come out. He wasn't sure if it had something to do with the humidors. But he also said something interesting too, that catchers are actually getting rid of these splotchy balls because the inseams could be as well. It could leave the balls that are really hard for them to grip. So overall, it feels like they're using a different ball this year, which is unfortunate, but it's going to be really hard for us to figure out when new balls will come in, when these balls are done, how many of these, these weird balls are going to be actually used in games. Are they going to be used in all games? It's a very confusing state that we're in right now, but we're actually seeing the offense go up, and I don't know, that generates ratings. So I don't know if MLB is too upset about this.
Why can't we just be honest about what the baseball is and is not? Just be forthcoming with it. I liked what Scooble said at the end of the article. You did an amazing job of summing that up. And the fact of the matter is that the ball is flying farther right now for whatever reason, whether it be heat, whether it be drag coefficients, whether it be the oil, whatever it might be. But they also talked about that it's the same in domes. It's not changing because of the weather necessarily, right? So that kind of leads us to the thought process of, maybe there is something to be said about the ball. But Scooble at the end of the article, I thought his quote was great. He says you can go down whatever conspiracy theory you want to go down, manipulation of balls, whatever, and you'll probably get nowhere because there's no accountability on that side of adjusting baseballs, which is interesting because there seems to be a lot of data out there suggesting that, especially in 2019, the balls were flying much farther than they used to. Now they're doing it again. I don't quite get it, but I guess I'm not meant to understand. He's just a pawn in the game of life, right?
Yeah.
But it is a very the topic itself is something that I think invites a lot of scrutiny because it would be really nice to know what they're doing to the baseballs. Because I know even just as a high school coach that there are batches of baseballs that we get that seem a little bit different than others, that seem like there might be a little more tightly wound. And then I remember being a kid and being in high school, and I tell our players this all the time. I used to be able to pinch the leather up near the lace and get up a little ridge right underneath where the stitching was. And it was a bad habit that I had. It must have been like a nervous habit where I would just take my thumb and dig it underneath, and there was room. It wasn't stitched so tightly that you couldn't do that. Now you can't do that. There's just no chance that you're going to be able to do that. Now, granted, my hands are 35 years older than they were when I did that. However, it's still, the ball is different. There's just no doubt about it.
You know what though? Is this the only sports ball that is manufactured by hand? Because we don't see this in any other sports. It's not like in basketball, this ball will bounce a little more than the other ones, or football with the grip. I don't know if that's done by hand, but the fact that baseballs are done by hand, it feels like, yeah, it has to have this indifference, and it's an unfortunate coincidence, but anything done by hand, there's going to be minute differences in every single thing that's done. I don't know if they need to change the process and then maybe not have it done by hand, but to actually eliminate any indifferences between balls.
I almost wonder if it's purposeful in that, summer is here, school is out, teams are trying to draw bigger crowds to the stadium, offense sells. We know that the majority of people that want to pay to go to a baseball game don't care to see a 2-1 game. They want to see offense. They want to see balls flying out of the park. You got to wonder if there's something behind that with MLB. And I'm not a big conspiracy theory type of guy, right? I know Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. Okay, right? Like all this stuff. But here's the thing. There might be something to this one in that they might be doing things purposely to hold back certain batches of baseballs for certain parts of the season. Don't you think?
I mean, hitting gets ratings. So, yeah, I don't think you're wrong in the sense that baseball likes it. And I think it's funny that the only person that's really spoken up, at least that I know of, and for this article, was a pitcher. It's not like a hitter is saying, "Oh no, I don't like this. And my batting average has gone up, but this isn't good for the game." It's a pitcher actually doing it. So I think there is some merit to this, if you want to call it a conspiracy, that baseball loves the fact that hitting is up, ratings are hopefully up, and it's a more fun game to watch for the entire family when runs are scored, as opposed to hitting the outside corner for your ninth strikeout of the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Boy, it's an interesting time we live in, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah.
There's so much data out there now that you start to wonder if how much of that really starts to play into the mindset of people. There's been a lot of controversy, I guess you could say, this year with people calling guys who look and girls who look at stats eggheads and the fantasy nerds and all these other things that kind of go into that. There are a lot of theories out there about how much is too much, and if we're drinking out of the proverbial fire hose when it comes to looking at all the statistical analysis that we have. It's amazing to me in this day and age that we live in, the amount of data that's available at my fingertips. And I'm an old person who goes back a long way to there not even being a computer. Heck, this morning when you and I were talking before the show, when I started my career in education, we had one computer for the whole building. Now everybody's lugging around personal laptops, but all I have to do is get a couple of mouse clicks and I can be on Savant, or I can be, in a variety of different pages, Fangraphs, taking a look at all this different data and going down these rabbit holes. I also wonder too sometimes if that we use that to sort of affirm what our beliefs are, but maybe do we use that to then deny other things that might be actually really happening? I wonder how much of that actually really happens around MLB.
Well, can we go down a couple rabbit holes
Let's go down some conspiracy theory rabbit holes, Dave, because I know you have some, quiet as you are. I know that there are some things that you think are at play here.
I got a few things that they're not crazy ones, although I did like your MLB likes offense one. So that might be the best one. But what are the odds here that some of this is weather assisted? I know that, some models take weather into account, but winds are up, the heat is up, the humidity helps offense. And as such, players start to get tired. Like pitchers don't pitch well. We had a pitcher faint the other day.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been heat related. We don't know yet. It could be weather assisted. Maybe that's why offense is up. What are the odds that it could be injury assisted?
Mm-hmm.
Injuries are piling up. Players are pitching, or pitchers are playing through injuries. As such, players get called up too soon. They're not ready to pitch. They get hammered and they get called back down. Options are running out, so they have to, release players and call up somebody else just to make a start. And what are the odds that hitters are actually now just adjusting? Like they've seen what the best that pitchers have to offer,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're actually adjusting to what the pitchers are throwing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Those are my three rabbit holes. They're not as extravagant as your conspiracy that MLB is behind this, but Like MLB's got that white cat, and they're sitting there like, ah, ha, ha, ha. 6 more
Dr.
runs.
Evil. Rob Manfred as Dr. Evil,
Yeah.
$1 million, I think there's a lot to parse here, and we could probably have a whole other show on this aspect of things. But when you look at the shuttling back and forth of players, especially in the pitching realms, it's easy to see the war of attrition that goes on during the course of a season. Name me a team that has 5 really good, consistent starters. I'll wait. And it doesn't happen too often, right?
No.
Name me a team that has 8 outstanding relievers. I'll wait. There aren't any. So depth becomes a real issue. You've got 30 teams that are 26 deep. You're going pretty far down. To be able to manage the workload and to be able to manage this idea that, hey, you want to make a deep playoff run, teams are not using 5 starting pitchers like they used anymore when I was a kid. It was very common for pitchers back when I was a kid to throw 35 starts and throw well over 300 innings in the process, 250 to 300 innings, low strikeouts, and just pitch and pitch and pitch and pitch. Guys were not throwing 98 miles an hour when they were coming into games. It was very rare that you even had a guy that would throw 90 when I was a kid. You had the Nolan Ryans of the world and things like that, but you also had the guys that were throwing, mid 80s and were able to preserve themselves for long careers. I mean, Mark Burley never threw hard, and he threw 200 innings 15 years in a row, right? So you have all of these different things to kind of feed into it, but I do think that the emphasis on velocity, the emphasis on max effort really wears people out. And now we're getting into the not necessarily the dog days of summer, but we've gone from it being very mild and wet to all of a sudden being super humid and hot. And that saps players' energy as well. So you have players that are playing every day. You'll have a number of guys that are going to play over 140 games this year. Every team will have a few of those guys. Those guys are getting a little bit of a drag going right now. It's a grind. I mean, they're 80 some games into their season, more than that in a lot of places, I should say. And they get tired. So I think it's also a depth issue. Their injuries do pile up, but you have teams that are manipulating their rotation all the time. Like, for example, I think the White Sox just did it with Noah Schultz. Like, they gave him a 2-week break in the middle of the season by saying that he had a knee issue. He was in the dugout the whole time. I don't know how bad he was really hurt. In that situation, you could say, yep, he's got a tweak. We're going to sit him down. We're going to be safe and err on the side of caution. But that's also getting him a 2-week break where he's not throwing at, max velo and going out there and really trying to wheel and deal. The White Sox have a dearth of starting pitching options right now. They want Schultz down the stretch. They're going to, maybe have Tanner McDougal down the stretch, maybe Hagen Smith, maybe Shane Smith will be back again. I think a lot of teams are following that program of, hey, let's manipulate this a little bit and then see what we get to. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Dodgers model, right? You look at what the Dodgers do, and obviously they're throwing money at problems, and I understand that. But before you throw that at me, let me just make this suggestion. What the Dodgers are really doing is they just want to get into the playoffs. They're 58-31. They have a 14-game lead in the National League West. No one's going to catch them. So they can manipulate a little bit too. So what they're going to try to do is what? They're going to try to figure out who their 3 best starters are when the playoffs roll around. And maybe that's Ohtani and Yamamoto, but maybe that third guy is Emmett Sheehan. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's Blake Snell. Maybe he's back from injury and he's the guy that's there. Or maybe it's Tyler Glasnow. So those guys are hurt right now, but those are guys that they hope to get back. So they're going to run 8, 9, 10 different starting pitchers out there. And when October rolls around, they're just going to see who the 3 best guys are that they have. And then they'll do something crazy like Roki Sasaki will come in the 5th inning and blow people away at 100 miles an hour for an inning and then turn it over to their bullpen. I think a lot of teams are following that type of model, right? Which is we're going to use a wide variety of pitchers. We just want to survive and get through this. And then when we get to the playoffs, we'll kind of see where we're at.
Yeah, the Dodgers are the masters at that. And I don't think Dave Roberts gets enough credit for being able to manipulate his roster the way he does. Like, if you think about a guy like Ben Kasparius, last year came in and was their long reliever and then started a few games and then got a couple of saves. Without him, they would not have been in the position that they were in. But Dave Roberts was able to find this guy, manipulate him to a sense that to get him to do what they needed to do, call him up if he needed a start, if they needed him to go 4 innings in long relief, whatever it was. And he's able to do this year after year. And that's what he does for these Dodgers, is he's able to manipulate their roster to make it work now so that later in the year, they will have what they need to make a playoff run.
Correct.
I kind of wish more teams would do something like this, and maybe they'll learn from this, because you can really grow in a sense that your team, you're playing for the future, but you're trying to win now. And I love the way that the Dodgers do that, and that's more the Dodgers model. But maybe that also comes because they're also ultra rich and they have the best farm system in all of baseball, so they have that luxury.
But that's not an accident either, right?
No.
It's very easy to look at the Dodgers, and I can hear people talking right now as they're listening to this tomorrow, right? Where they're going to say, yeah, Mike and Dave, cool, great. But they have Ohtani. They got Freddie Freeman. They got Mookie Betts. They got Kyle Tucker. They've got a cavalcade of stars. However, we know for sure about baseball that it takes more than stars to be able to win titles. Yeah. And so, last year they don't win the World Series without Miguel Rojas, who's a role player on their team, right? They don't win without him. And now they've gotten contributions that are meaningful from Dalton Rushing. Tommy Edman is back and can switch back and forth between second base and outfield. And as a matter of fact, on last Tuesday, he played third base for them, So they're mixing and matching these guys around and getting through. They have a bunch of solid veterans like Teoscar Hernandez and Max Muncy. Andy Pages has obviously been fantastic. They're making it work in the bullpen. Edwin Diaz will ostensibly be back after the All-Star break, which will then bump all those guys that are down near the closing role right now down a spot where
I totally forgot they had Edwin Diaz.
Yeah. So he should be back after the All-Star break, and they'll have Tanner Scott and Edgardo Enriquez, who's been fantastic, and Vesia. Brock Stewart is back from injury. They just keep throwing things at you, and they'll just figure it out. Now, I know that they have a lot of resources, but they also have the best farm system in the game.
It's so good.
You don't necessarily do that by having a ton of money. You do that by being extremely wise and bright in what you do. And the Dodgers, tip of the cap to them, because as much as you'd like to despise them for just signing big ticket market guys, they have actually a really good team.
They're the best team in baseball, and their injured list could actually field like some of the worst teams. They could actually help the worst teams. It's unbelievable what they do.
Well, they have the best record in baseball right now at 58-31, but the Milwaukee Brewers would also like a word. They're
True.
Pretty good too. However, we know that in the playoffs, the Dodgers usually end up making short work of the Brewers, or somebody makes short work of the Brewers. But that could be a fun team to watch here too, with their young pitching coming up. I have an article coming out that I mentioned earlier. I'm also going to be focused on Sproat and Shane Drohan this week too. Shane Drohan was in a White Sox uniform as a Rule 5 pick a couple years ago, and they ended up giving him back to Boston, unfortunately. But he looks like he's really coming into his own. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Yeah. But we could do an entire show on conspiracy theories. Dave touched on a few here. I stand by my comment I made earlier about MLB baseball. Let's indict you. We're going to take our last ad break and come back with our mental health moment. All right, Dave, we're back. Now, it's a holiday weekend here in the United States. You guys had your holiday in Canada last week, correct?
We did. It was Wednesday, I think it was, July 1st.
July 1st. Do you guys get the day off there nationally for that?
Yes. Yeah, everything's closed, or most things are closed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I went to the bakery to get a donut this morning because, I'm not fat enough already as it is, and it was closed this morning. I totally forgot that it was the 4th of July. But the 4th of July weekend here and the July 1st weekend, or not weekend, but the July 1st holiday for you guys in Canada got me to thinking a little bit about our mental health moment this week, which is, how do we parcel out that time on a really busy holiday weekend, especially when if you've been working hard and you're tired, you might not be in the most festive of moods these days, right? It's been really hot here. It's been really humid. People seem to be more irritated with each other. The corn sweats are a very real thing that are happening here in the Midwest. I went to Menards yesterday and everybody looked like me, haggard, sweating, in need of a shave and a shower. But Dave, I wanted to ask you as we kind of close out our show this week, what do you do when you're in a situation where you have to parcel out your time in small pieces like this weekend? Like, for example, today I'm supposed to go to 4 parties, neighborhood parties for the 4th of July. Yet I still also need to cut my grass. I need to get my medication refilled. I need to get gas for the mower. I need to pick up something for this other party. How do you parcel out your time on a busy weekend like that?
Look at you with 4 parties today.
I know I can't help it. People just want me around because of my jolly attitude, and they're not going to ask me about baseball conspiracy theories, I'm guessing today, but maybe somebody will.
That would be great if they did. For me, I kind of I force myself actually to do things, because there are times when you can just get too caught up in the everyday hustle and bustle of life, and you get in that routine. It's work, come home, do your things that you always do, and you kind of forget that you're allowed to enjoy yourself. You're allowed to have some fun, and I kind of force myself to do that, because if you don't, you're gonna be mentally drained, physically drained, and you may not realize it until it's too late, but it's just, you go through that everyday grind and it's just bringing you down. So for me, I make myself do it, even if I don't want to. If I don't want to, I don't always want to see people or, host people or, go out and be around, but I kind of just force myself. And then I find after a while, I'm having enough fun anyways, that it's, oh yeah, this is what it's like. Yeah, I remember. I've always had fun with you, or it's been great. We're just hanging out. And I find after that, even though I might be a little tired the next day because I was out and it was out of my routine, I find that mentally it does refresh me. So I don't know if that's the answer to the question that you were saying. How do I spread myself out? I literally just force myself to do it. And then I end up having fun anyways. It's almost like a little kid. I'm almost like a little kid, not wanting to listen to my parents, but I do it and then I have fun and I just won't admit it afterwards. But that's
sure. Yeah. I always think it's funny that people think that I'm like this natural extrovert, but I'm actually really an introvert. And I really crave that alone time and downtime where I can kind of shift into neutral and sort of recharge my batteries. And you and I have talked about this weekly for years, which is you and I both are excessive morning people. We do most of our writing for the articles that we write in the morning, early in the morning, make a pot of coffee. We're up before the crack of dawn. We're up before anybody else is in our house. And I don't know what kind of reception you get from your wife and kids there, but my wife and kids think that I'm crazy. They're like, you could do this at 3:00 in the afternoon. I said, no, I really can't. My mind is just not there to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I have those moments where I can really do those types of things, right? Where I can really shift into that neutral ground and have an hour or two where I'm just writing and drinking coffee and being alone. That's my recharge time. So that when I go to parties like I do today, I can be my normal self and be in a good mood, a good enough mood to be able to reciprocate conversation and be part of the events that are going on without being a bore. And I say bore, B-O-R-E, like boring, but a bore also B-O-A-R, like a fat pig just walking around and being a jerk. And I don't want to be either one of those things when I'm with people.
I can't picture you being a jerk. Honestly, I can't.
Well, it happens. I could tell you some stories, but the point of the exercise, I think, is to know what you need and to balance those things out, right? To balance your need for that quiet, introspective morning time with a cup of coffee before anyone's awake, and then being social with people that are around you. And the fact that you've got several parties to bounce around to means that you don't have to give out all of your energy in one place. You can kind of parcel it out that way. And then this evening, I'll probably reward myself after the fireworks and after the beers and the brats and things of that nature. I'll probably reward myself by watching an MLB game late somewhere on the West Coast and just have a nice wind down time into that, try to get some sleep and hopefully, be awake again tomorrow morning, God willing. So anyway, that's kind of what I do. And I know that that's a topic of interest for a lot of people, especially men. We're expected to just kind of keep going and no matter what happens. And even after a long week where then we have this 4th of July weekend, we're expected to continue to still give of ourselves when we are in these social situations. Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you for our quote of the week and then get us out of here.
All right. So for the quote of the week, it's actually from the Dansby Swanson article. And I wanted to quote it there, but I thought it was kind of cool here. And it's not just about baseball, but you could actually tailor it to life as well. But manager Craig Counsell said, "We never really have baseball figured out." And I think this tells you that. Swanson probably went through the roughest patch of his career, and on the other side of it, the best stretch of his career. You figure it out. I don't think Dansby could explain it to you either. And I think that's really good for not just him and baseball, but with life as well. You just never know. You could go through something really bad, and next thing you know, you're living the dream. So,
yeah, for sure. It's wild, isn't it?
It's crazy.
It's a wild thing.
Every time you think you have it figured out, you really don't.
No, you don't. And it's nice to get knowledge as you get older, but it's always good to keep that in mind that we just really don't have it all figured out and just try to live each day to the best that we can and with the best knowledge that we have and the best skills that we can put to it. And remembering that some days are just going to be better than others.
Yeah, exactly.
With that, Dave, I'm going to wrap up episode 13 of Breakfast with the Beats. For all of you listening, thank you so much for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a rating and any feedback that you might have as well. We enjoy that. We love hearing from people. We'll be back next week with another show. But thank you for listening. Thanks for being there. Have a great and safe holiday weekend. We hope that you enjoy it and that everything goes well for you in your plans on this weekend. Take care. Peace. And we will see you next weekend.